Good morning from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's 7:50 a.m. on the 17th of March 2025. 17th of March. I think that's St. Patrick's Day if you're Irish. Also happens to be my ex-husband's nephew's birthday. Happy birthday, Mark. Not that he watches my videos, but I'll put the energy of blessing and acknowledgement and peace and joy out into the ether. I was quite fond of my nephew, Mark. But anyway, it went all right, as things often do in families. Anyway, I won't focus on that, but happy birthday anyway, wherever you are, and happy St. Paddy's Day. It's a beautiful morning, absolutely gorgeous morning. I woke up at 6, which is astonishing given how unwell I was yesterday. And I had a terrible night the night before, I had a bad night the night before that, and a bit of a rough night the night before that. So yesterday morning I had a bit of a fucking breakdown on Instagram. I bled all over Instagram and Facebook. But anyway, better to express yourself than to repress yourself, and better out than in. And somehow I'm better today. Only had to pee once during the night. Once is acceptable, even twice. Any more than that gets grinding on my nervous system and my entire body. But anyway, I'm moderately better is what I'm saying. Had a lovely time at drumming yesterday afternoon as well, and I just posted a video on YouTube and Instagram, Facebook of about a dozen bees all busily pollinating my dragon fruit flower. It's its third flush and there's only a few flowers, but this one might be the shot. There's so many bees. The magic might just happen. I might even get one dragon fruit. I may not though. I won't get too excited because they usually just wither and fall off. You know, like my love life. Wither and drops off like fleas off a slowly dying dog. It's a bit like that actually. Dark, I know, but it is a bit like that. Anyway, I don't have a love life, but I do have some lovely friends. And that's sometimes more beautiful and blessed and life enhancing and enriching than any amount of fake lovers. Oh, can't stand fake lovers. Had a lifetime of those. Oh, withering they are, withering psychic vampires and just ghastly. But on a happy note, where was I? Yes, it's a beautiful day. Went dancing on Saturday night. Had a lovely time too, even though, you know, I was kind of pushing myself, given I wasn't all that well. Look at the bags under my eyes. Oh dear goddess. I might crawl back into bed after I finish these stories. I'm still kind of in recovery. In recovery, my people of planet Earth, my beautiful ones. Those of you like me, soldiering on every day. In every way. There's not a cloud in the sky, it's absolutely blue and beautiful, so trees are patiently doing what they do every day, breathing and pushing out new leaves and dropping old ones, and it's autumn, coming into autumn here. 17th of March, yes. Soon it will be autumn. Well, technically it's autumn now, isn't it? March, April, May, June, July, August. Yeah, we're in autumn. I've been in denial about that. It's been so hot that I forgot that we were in autumn. Well, things are changing, transforming, preparing for winter. So, only a few stories to go. We've completed this wonderful book by Ted Hughes, the dream fighter and other creation tales. And today's story is titled Camel. Camel was a mistake. He was simply made wrong. He stood in God's backyard where the different kinds of clay and the fuel for the kilns lay in heaps. And he knew he was wrong, and he felt wrong all over. He opened his mouth, which was a bit like a horse's mouth, but longer and droopier and somehow wrong. He opened it and strained. A groan came out. Then he strained again. God could see that Camel was trying to speak. Camel wanted to cry. Why have you made me like this? I'm all wrong. Take me back and remake me. But nothing came out. God did try to remake Camel, but it was no good. When the inside's wrong, the outside can never be right. He tried different tails. All seemed wrong on Camel. He tried different feet. In the end, he put back the first set, great, spreading, foolish feet that they were. Camel's hump seemed badly wrong, but when God took it off, Camel fell on his nose, so he had to put that back too. I just want to segue, it just came to me, and it was beautiful. Yesterday at drumming, a little boy arrived with his mother, and the boy was severely autistic, and I think a little bit of Down syndrome. I'm not sure, but looked like he had Downs as well. Very autistic, non-verbal, but you know, a bright spark of spirit in him. He was a gorgeous little boy, and you know, quite, I don't know how to express it. Knew his own mind in his own way, you know, like knew what he wanted and didn't want, what he was comfortable with. And his mother was a beautiful woman, very loving and so focused on her son and just radiated so much love for him. I almost cried. It was beautiful to watch, actually. She said they'd travelled all the way from Wynnum on the train with their bikes, got off the train at South Brisbane, had ridden to West End, which is it's quite a long bike ride actually, especially for a boy about 10 or 11. And they'd ridden from the train station. Oh no, maybe they caught a bus from the train station and then rode from there. Anyway, but it was still a big trip. And and then they'd ridden to the West End Park where we met for drumming. And then she said, we're going now and we're going to get home quite late and dark. It'll be dark when we get home. She giggled, but I could tell she was a little bit nervous. It was a big trip for a woman on her own with her little boy who's, got his own unique, special abilities and problems that come with it, as we all have as mortals. Anyway, he sort of sat beside me, the little boy, and looked at me. I realised he was a bit non-verbal, so I was being friendly and engaging with him and showing him some little instrument that I was playing, because Belinda brings lots of percussion instruments as well as drums. And so some lovely little chime, and I was trying to get him to play with a chime, but no, didn't want to. But he was kind of looking at me rather intrigued. And anyway, he went and sat for a while on the grass, just looking at the river, and he was quite independent. And remarkable little boy, actually. There were a couple of other little boys there. One was beautiful. He was so shy, and he wanted to play on the big drum, and then he didn't want that. He wanted the medium-sized drum. And then he stood there all shy, and I said, you can do it. You can do anything, which every child needs to be taught from a very young age. You can do anything. And the more insecure and lacking confidence they are, the more that should be reinforced. You can do anything. Just put your mind to it, overcome the anxiety and the fear, the lack of confidence. And here I am, almost 60 years old, and I have to remind myself too that I can do anything and overcome my own atrophies and confidence that was beaten, strangled out of me, and just overcome and blossom and bloom and, be the best version of myself too. So it's not just something that's powerful to tell a child, but adults too need to be reminded that we are powerful and talented and magical, and we can indeed do anything. Some things might be beyond our abilities, like if you threw me from a great height, I probably wouldn't fly and plummet to earth in a great crashing heap. But I'm talking about within the realms of our own abilities and talents and attributes. We can do anything. So anyway, so I said to him, remember that you can do anything. Anyway, when he saw this little disabled boy, he got up and he was banging on the drum, this shy one that had been so shy. I think kind of to show, I too have talents and abilities, and now I'm not afraid because I can see someone who would struggle to do even that much. It was quite unconscious, but I was observing. I thought, yes, he got inspired to show, look, I can drum, you can drum too. Children are really wonderful, quite wonderful at times. I didn't have a very nice childhood. I had a lot of awful bullying throughout my childhood, but when children choose to be kind and noble and encouraging, supportive, they can be the most inspiring little creatures. So I was observing all of this playing out. So I said to the shy little one that had been shy earlier, I said, look at you. Ooh, look at you drumming. He smiled, the shy smile. He was a handsome little boy, actually. He's going to be a very handsome man when he grows up. And not that everything's about being handsome, but it's just an observation. It's just a very nice looking child. But when he smiled, his whole face flushed with delight. And I thought, oh, that's why I'm alive. Sometimes you get these moments and you think you're just encouraging someone young and full of energy and full of promise, and it's inspiring. It inspires me too to kick myself along a bit more and hold my line and keep blooming too, even at my late stage of life. So, but what I wanted to share about that was when the mother with the disabled little boy went to leave, she mentioned that they had a long trip back to Wynnum. I was really quite amazed at the level of commitment to go travel across the city like that alone with a, handicapped child. But, they were impressive, the two of them. Anyway, her little boy, her son, stood and looked at me. He'd kind of been, not very engaging, disengaged, because overwhelmed. I even said to his mother, I don't want to overwhelm him, because I could see he was autistic and non-verbal. And she just smiled. She said, it's okay, you know. She knows her son better than anyone. So anyway, when they stood to sort of say goodbye, the little boy looked at me and waved and blew me a kiss like this. And I was just like, oh, and I went, oh, you blew me a kiss. Back at you, my darling. He was like so happy. And I was like, it was just magical. It was just magical. And I felt so thrilled about that, you know, that we'd all had this wonderful experience and gifted this lovely little boy such joy, and even in his own non-verbal way he had shown that he enjoyed himself and appreciated, you know, the fuss that everyone made. And we made all a bit of a fuss of each other, actually. That's the point of community, that sense of feeling that, you know, you're participating in an activity, in this case drumming circle, but you're also forming a community. Anyway, two other lovely women that attended said to me, will you be there next month? And I said, very likely. I did miss last month, but I'm usually here. And they said, oh good, because we'll come again. And I thought that was lovely too, that they felt happy and inspired, and we had fun together there at the West End River at the park. So yeah, it was beautiful. It was a perfect antithesis of my absolute fucking despairing, suicidal ideation, atrophy, firestorm in my mind that went on in the morning. So from yin to yang, complete extremes. And it reminded me that sometimes I just have to keep pushing myself through and be surprised by the universe and the gifts that she brings me. Him, her, or it, or she, or it. God has no gender in my worldview. Just going to put the aircon on. Suddenly hot. Suddenly very, very hot. Excuse me. Why is that not working? So yes, it really was magical yesterday. Right. God could see that Camel was trying to speak. Camel wanted to cry. Why have you made me like this? I'm all wrong. Take me back and remake me. But nothing came out. God did try to remake Camel, but it was no good. When the inside's wrong, the outside can never be right. He tried different tails, all seemed wrong on Camel. He tried different feet. In the end, he put back the first set. Great, spreading, foolish feet that they were. Camel's hump seemed badly wrong, but when God took it off, Camel fell on his nose, so he had to put that back too. Finally, God gave up, and Camel stood there with his head like a giant sheep, his neck like an old snake looking out of a tree, his back like a sand dune, and his long, knock-kneed legs like a photographer's broken tripod. He stretched out his neck and groaned. He wanted his groan to say, remake me. But God shook his head. My first real failure, he sighed. I'll have to scrap you, I'm afraid. Camel Camel flung up his head. Scrap me? He knew what that meant. It meant going on to the spare parts heap. He swung round and got his legs going. He went out through the yard gate in a cloud of dust. No matter how wrong and horrible he was, he didn't want to become nothing but spare parts for other creatures. He loped into the middle of a valley full of dry thorn bushes and stood there, hoping nobody could see him. God would have chased Camel, but at that moment man walked into his yard with a bleeding head. Woman was supporting him. "The hair's not enough," she wailed. "It's no protection at all." "What happened?" cried God. He was horrified to see that one of his best inventions had been damaged. Man was so busy holding his head, and woman was so busy comforting him, and God was so busy looking at the great scratches on man's forehead that none of them saw a dark shape leap up into the tree beside the gate. The boughs shook for a moment, then two green eyes peered out through the shadows of the leaves. "Did you fall?" cried God. "It was monkeys," man gasped. "A monkey tried to claw all my hair off." God saw what was needed. He had just prepared the skin for a new kind of pig. It hung on the line. Now he took it down, and with a few skillful twists, there it was, a hat, a new protective hat, almost a helmet. He spat on man's wounds, which healed instantly and fitted on the helmet. "Oh," cried woman, "but it's so cute." "Oh, please, God, me too. A monkey could get me too. Oh, please, a hat for me too." "Quite easy," murmured God. This time he took the skin of a big sort of weasel he'd been thinking about. The skin of a fisher. With a few deft folds and tucks, there it was, finished. A pretty fur hat with the tail dangling behind. Woman gave a squeal of pleasure as she fitted it on. "Now you, God," she cried, "one for yourself. Let's all have hats." The green eyes in the dark tree jerked upwards a little, getting a better view, and blinked rapidly. Then they glowed, fiercer than before, watching the hats. God smiled. These hats were a brilliant new idea. Man looked more powerful. Woman looked prettier. He scratched his beard and thought, "Well, what about it? Why not a hat for me too?" Suddenly at that moment he felt uneasy. He could feel something watching him. He turned, but he saw nothing because the green eyes in the dark tree had closed tightly just in time. They knew they glowed. "This creature that attacked you," said God. "Are you sure it was a monkey?" "He thinks it was," said woman. "But let me tell you, God, that was no monkey. Monkeys don't have hooked claws. They have fingernails like me. Monkeys aren't bald." "Bald?" cried God. "You say it was bald?" The green eyes in the dark tree opened again and stared. "Take no notice of her," said Man. "It was pitch black in the jungle." But God was frowning. "Did you see footprints?" he asked. "Like a frog," cried Woman. A frog the size of a gorilla. The green eyes blinked and became slits. Man tried to change the subject. "What about a hat for you, God?" he said. "How about it? How about the whole sky? That would be some hat." "With the shooting stars," cried Woman, "and birds flying in it, and a thundercloud for a crest, and rain falling." Both God and Man laughed at that. "A heavenly hat," cried Woman. That night, when God went to sleep, he wasn't thinking about a hat. He was thinking about those footprints, like a giant frog's. "So the demon is back on earth," he whispered, "and it sounds as though he's after Man." As he lay thinking in the dark, a small bat came creeping down the wall, head downstairs. It moved slowly. Its green eyes were tightly closed. Finally, it was hanging just above God's head. It was the demon sitting. Where are we? Just lost my spot. How did I just lose my spot like that? Right. It was the demon sitting in the tree by the gate. It had heard and seen everything about the hats, and now, after making itself into this tiny bat, it hung near God's head, trying to hear God's thoughts. It was true, this demon had grabbed at Man's head, but all he'd wanted was the hair. Actually, what he really wanted was Woman's hair. But in the gloom of the forest, he had grabbed at the wrong head. His wife had sent him to steal Woman's hair, and she wanted this thick mass of ringlets because she herself was as bald as the demon himself. Getting my hair done next Tuesday. Not this Tuesday. I had to wait 8 weeks, but look at that. I look awful, people are a bit subconscious when I look awful. I mean, you know, I'm not all that attractive at the best of times, so I try to keep my hair at least a bit nice. It's expensive and have to go a while in between and just feel kind of semi-grotty. Not too grotty, but semi-grotty. Well, I'll never be a supermodel anyway. I was always too short, too fat, big feet, far too much attitude. Can you imagine me being bossed around by some fucking predator photographer leering at me? They would have all got short shrift, and that would have been the end of my brilliant career. I really admire supermodels. They take a lot. They go through a lot to achieve that level of success. All the meanwhile, you know, adhering to some very contrived standards of beauty, involving them being starving most of the time. Oh, I could not abide that, not for one moment. I like food too much. I've got a large appetite, full of vivacious appetites. Most of them are suppressed because it's not safe for me. Ah, smallest violin. All day long I'd beat a bum if I were a wealthy woman. Well, there is that too. But I would have been wealthy had I not been robbed by the most evil miscreants, including my own mother and her con-man husband. So there is that. That was 15 years ago now. I have to. Still rebuilding from ground zero. I'm never going to make it, people of Earth. I don't think I am anyway. It's far, far too late for me. However, I won't cry. I'll enjoy this beautiful day and what's left to me by the gods' blessings and endowment and sweetness and abundance. What's left to me is my spirituality and my joy and delight amongst the putrescence and spite and smite. And, meeting all those little children yesterday was lovely, but meeting especially the special boy waving me goodbye and blowing me kisses was delightful. She who has no grandchildren, no family left really, apart from my cousins and, my few very rare and precious close friends who are family to me. That's what I'm left with, people of Earth. So yes, sometimes I fall into despair and rage and throw epic fucking tantrums and want to cry, and crying won't solve anything. But it's a little bit of a, pressure release, like a boiling pressure pot. Got to release the excess energy at times in a safe, contained way that harms no one. It's very important. Excuse me while I scream. Screaming on the inside. A part of this coming to life thing with this CPAP therapy is I get my hopes up and even my libido's improving and singing weird cosmic songs, and I have to tamp that down for safety reasons too. So there is all of that going on in my little hobbit body, just churning away, churning away, churning away. And it's inspiring and it's kind of attractive to people, and the life force and the will to live and the fight back from so many declensions and cruelties and atrophies. I don't think I can keep living like that, quite frankly. But I say that, and then I do. I do a 180 pirouette and back on my feet, and off we go, and it's magical. It's magical is the only way I can describe it. I have a lot of support from my angels. Can't see them, but I know I'm being supported right now. One of my little mischievous earth angels puts little likes on my Instagram, which is sweet too. That's how he supports me. And yes, I'm frustrated because I wish things could be different, but that's all I have. Then I'll take delight in all that is and was and ever shall be, and just be grateful and satisfied with that much. Meanwhile, there's new wonderful wonders to encounter, like that sweet little boy blowing me kisses. So today is Monday. I have the whole week ahead of me. I wonder what manifestations I might come up with. I've ordered some, it was quite expensive, and I hope I've got the right thickness even. I'm not even 100% sure what I've ordered, to be honest. It was a bit of a gamble. Not a gamble in that it'll be a total waste because I'll be able to use it for something else, but a gamble in the sense of not sure if it's suitable for the purpose I actually wanted it. But I ordered some fine silver sheet, 0.3 thickness, and I'm going to cut it to size because I couldn't get, it was going to be more expensive trying to buy the actual size. For this small piece of, so I'm very emotional at the moment. It's because of my bladder signalling and getting depleted and defeated and struggling. But anyway, I ordered this ages ago, a couple of months ago. That lady's no longer cutting stones either. I have to find a new lepidologist. She was a wonderful person to do business with, very kind soul. Anyway, I bought this piece of Persian turquoise through her, just a little square little stone, but it was quite high and it was hard for me to get the right size bezel wire. But I've decided for my birthday, it's kind of a birthday present to myself. I don't actually need more jewellery, to be honest. It's getting a bit silly now. It really is. But I want to challenge myself. I recently bought, some spoons, which I bought the matching spoon handles. And I've decided, instead of turning them both into rings, because I certainly don't need any more rings, certainly no more spoon rings, I'll turn it into a cuff. So I want to solder the Persian little turquoise stone that I bought onto some sheet. I hope I've got enough sheet to solder it onto, because that's expensive to buy also. And thought that was my daughter's car for a moment, same colour and shape, but it's not. Anyway, put the stone on that, solder the bezel wire, which I will cut from this 0.3 thickness sheet, which I can't use for backing, it won't be heavy enough, but it'll be fine for bezel wire. Cut that onto, cut that off, make the bezel, solder it onto some little bit of sheet I've still got left, got 2 small pieces, make just enough. Hope it is, if not I'll have to buy it, simple as that, to spend the money. And thinking out loud, people, thinking out loud. And solder that on, and I'll solder it to the 2 spoon handles and bend it, and it'll make a lovely cuff for my wrist. Don't really need any more bracelets either. But anyway, it's basically a project I want to do, and then wear it in good health when I created it. It's a birthday present to myself for my 60th. I like to have little treats in life and something to look forward to, and also it's, good practice for my silversmithing, and making my own things for myself means they don't have to be 100% perfect, and although I strive to make them to the best of my abilities, but if it's not 100% perfect, it won't matter because it's just for me. And so that's my next project. But I ordered the sheet from China, so it'll probably take another week or 2 to get here. Maybe sometimes it can take up to a month, it just depends. Sometimes it arrives astonishingly quickly too. Been surprised before. Anyway, when that arrives, that'll be my next project I'm working on. I need to buy another oxygen tank, or transfer my empty oxygen tank and get that new one. So that's another expense. It's a lot of expense. I don't actually do a lot with it, so it's a lot of outlay and then not really producing much, but that's okay. It doesn't go off it. As long as I don't get a leak in it, like what happened when the hoses melted a couple of years ago. It's how I lost most of that oxygen in that tank. So it should be fine. It can just sit there and wait for me to have the silver and or gold resources as I gather together resources very, very slowly, given my situation. Oh, small violin again. But I'm quite impressed with what I've managed to, slowly gather together, and I gave a lot of it away as presents to people in the last few months because I hadn't been able to sell anything, fell into despair and thought, you know what, fuck it. I made these to be worn, not to lie around slowly. Well, they don't rot, but doing nothing, just sitting there, stagnant energy. It needs to go out into the world and be a blessing to someone and let them wear it in good health and enjoy it. So I did a lot of that in the last few months, and actually it was very uplifting for me spiritually. I felt good about it, that I'd given instead of constantly in a state of receiving and always feeling like I'm, a fucking charity case or a whipped dog or a kicked cur at the mercy of the vicissitudes of fate and other humans. I hate feeling like that. I'm a powerful spirit who deserves to be treated like a queen, but unfortunately I live in housing commission on a disability pension, and I struggle financially, not so much financially because I'm provided for, by the same government that actively tried to kill me numerous times actually, but I am provided for. That also is a cosmic fucking twist. And so I struggle quite immensely, and I struggle with my own feelings of failure, atrophy and inadequacy and lack of stable, loving partnership and lack of support. I mean, I do get supported in sweet little ways, but I mean, having a stable partner and surrounded by a loving family, and I've had all that torn from me by circumstances beyond my control too. So it's all a bit overwhelming at times, So I chip away at life, I nibble away at life like a little rat in a lab rat cage looking for the cheese, am I right? Sometimes I get la creme de la creme of cheese like Camembert or Brie. But it doesn't agree with me anyway, darlings, because I'm lactose intolerant. But every now and then I indulge in a wheel of cheese because my body craves it for some reason, and sometimes it stays and doesn't leave me in terrible mess, and other times it's a terrible mess. But there is that. But anyway, I digress. The shittiness and the fecund failures are just quite astonishing at times. I mean, you have to laugh. But anyway, what was I saying? You're like a little lab rat. Keep pushing myself through and trying to achieve a measure of success, which for me is just to still be breathing and existing and loving and being and creating. And so I'm going to make that bracelet out of those 2 spoon handles because it will be lovely, and when I wear it I will look down at it and I will feel a success. It's confidence building and good for my self-esteem. It'll be pretty and admirable, and people look at me with envy, not realising how little I actually have and how huge the struggle is to achieve even that much. They look at me with such envy sometimes. And when they do, I've reached a point in life where I just laugh, because it just shows how infantile and stupid and ugly and soulless those types really are, who are still envious of me. For what? No family, no real family. My cousin in New Zealand is lovely, supportive, and my cousin in Cairns, and Jared and Lynn and Sally in New Zealand, but no real family to speak of anymore. Certainly not, not with me on a daily basis. And no lover and no partner. And with my seriously reactivated trauma issues, not ever likely to happen, because no one can cope with me as my mental states flux and flow with the tides. So, what kind of a life do I really have that people are so envious of? It's astonishing. But it's magical and it's powerful, because every day in every way I fight my way forwards, living my best life, dancing on the weekend, to music, to my favourite bands. If I trot along to their new venues, they've all been sent on some kind of journey, really. Sent out into the wild. They're being rewilded, my beautiful ones, my alter egos and ramjet. You've been rewilded. You've been sent out into the wild. And it's stressful because it's change, but it could be a positive, wonderful thing, because think of all the new contacts you meet, and people you meet, people who admire your music, and people who might create more business for you and support you. Oh, I hope that happens, because you're wonderful men and women, yes, and you deserve to succeed. And Mama T, in her crazy, zany, unusual ways, I deserve to succeed too. So may we all, as a kind of a musical tribe supporting each other, be blessed in our own unique ways, with our own unique talents and skills and abilities. Find our Zen zone and our safe place where we are free and wild and joyous and deeply loved and protected and cared for and blessed. And that goes for everyone. Everyone deserves that much. It's a lot to aspire to. For me, it's almost an impossible bloody dream, but every day in every way, while I'm still breathing, I'm still dreaming the psychedelic dream. Without the psychedelics, people there, drugs are bad, okay? But my Technicolor ever evolving, unfurling Mandelbrot Fibonacci spiraling out into the cosmos. I'm emanating and creating and being and living, and sometimes spiraling into the abyss in a fucking free-falling dive. I had to drag myself up even in the middle of it. Even as I read my Instagram posts, I could see myself pulling myself up, going, happy thoughts, channeling positivity right in the midst of the morass of ugliness I found myself involved in, and by my own little emotional meltdown. But in a way, even though it was a kind of an emotional bloodletting, I'm glad I did it, because my friends on Instagram or people that stumble across it, I'm fairly sure that's a private profile. on my Instagram, my tiny Desiree Aarons. I don't think a lot of the public get to see my posts on there, so I'm not that bothered. And anyway, I've got nothing to be ashamed of. I'm human. I have emotions. I have frustrations like everybody else. So anyway, but it was a strange, the only way I can describe it is it was a kind of a firestorm. Set a rocket under my tuchus. Reminded me, pull up, pull up, pull up. Breaker, 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 mayday, mayday, mayday. We're going down, we're going down. No, pull up, pull up, pull up. And then in the afternoon I met that lovely little, well, not just that one little boy, but 3 little boys that were there. And lovely souls, the adults that were there. I was rejuvenated and edified and felt loved and seen and respected. Sometimes that's all it takes, even if only one other person looks at you with that way. It's a gift. So let me continue with the story, because that too, in a way, is a gift. Right. The tiny bat that was really the demon had wanted the hair for his wife, who was bald like him. I can't understand that. I really admire. I've got this hair fetish. It's the only kind of fetish I have, really, is people with glorious manes of hair. There goes that little red car again. I don't know who those people are. Must be visiting my neighbours. It's like a knife on my chest, because it does look like my daughter's car every time I see it. Like, oh well, I'll probably never see her again as long as I live, and it's her choice. Her choices she'll have to live by, and I'll have to live by my eye. Let me take a breath. Just one moment. Just excuse me one moment. I'll make a cup of tea. I'll be back. Right, people of Earth, Mama T's back with a cup of tea and chocolate. The demon didn't dare to go back to her without something. Oh dear, I'm a bit of a mess today, aren't I? Oh well, so do these babies. She was a terror. He was frightened of her. Sometimes he thought he might just run away and never go back to her at all. But he didn't even dare to run away. He always went creeping back, usually carrying whatever she wanted. Sounds a bit like my mother and my father, to be honest. He was obsessed with her, hated her, but loved her, couldn't bear to be away from her. Long after their separation, when I was 7 turning 8, when we boarded ship on Fair Star to go to the voyage to Germany, she met my stepfather, de facto stepfather Case, on the return voyage. By then I was 8, so I turned 8 about a week into the voyage. And so she fell in love with Case, who was very charming, charismatic and womanising piece of fucking shit. But women loved him for some obscure reason. I could never quite figure out what it was, because he reminded me really of a modern day dandy. It's very proper shit. Well, he played guitar and he sang wonderful romantic songs, and it's very, winsome. The women would just open arms and open legs, am I right? Babies. So easy. They're so easy, women, to woo at times, because they're lonely but pathetic. He knew how to manipulate the lonely and the pathetic. He really did. He was a psychopath. So there is that. But he was a perfect foil for my mother in a way, Case, because she was a narcissist. And he wouldn't buy into her bullshit. That's why they stayed together for 23 years. She would start screaming and being histrionic and awful, and he'd just like, okay, darling, I'm going out for lunch, I'll see you when I get back. And he would just abruptly leave and go and do his own thing. And it was that level of detachment and independence that kept their relationship alive. Something to think about, isn't it? Anyway, but my father, they had separated, and he had to have, well, legally he had to have, but really it was a fucking waste of time, quite frankly. But I was a child, so I was in denial about that in those days. But he had to have access visits to me. And those access visits, he would come earlier and earlier in the morning. He was supposed to pick me up, I think, sometime around 9 or 10 in the morning. And we were living in Melbourne, because we migrated to Melbourne, my mother and I, so she could cohabit with Case. And we lived in Elstonwick, in the first house we rented with him. 74 Seymour Road, Elstonwick in Melbourne. It was a nice house. It had beautiful fig trees, absolute beautiful fig tree, and silver birches along the fence line. It was a beautiful house. But living with him was a living nightmare for me. Another fucking predator, constantly predating. Wasn't safe with him or her, my mother. Wasn't safe with those entities. My father had migrated along with us so he could have access to me, and he hoped he would get better work prospects living in Melbourne, which, he did. He did okay. Manual labour and odd jobs and what have you. So he would arrive earlier and earlier in the morning to pick me up because my father is an early riser and my mother from years of doing cleaning contracts and Dad doing labouring jobs. They used to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. They'd be wide awake, ready to go for the day. Astonishing, isn't it? Drives me nuts, early morning people. I'm only an early morning person if I've been up all night dancing. Otherwise, do not wake me up before some reasonable hour, like at the minimal 9 o'clock in the morning. It's quite astonishing that I've started waking up at 6 and 7 a.m. It's not my usual pattern, people there. I'm a late night, wild, nocturnal fruit bat hanging from the ceiling, but I like to sleep, the mornings away, traditionally. So my old man, my father, David Phillips, that fucking maniac, would arrive, instead of 10 it would be 9, and from 9 it would be 8, 7 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Mum would let him in. They were great friends even though they'd separated. They had this kind of love-hate thing, but they still had this kind of fealty or loyalty or friendship. I think because Mum had no other family really, just us, her 2 daughters, and she didn't have a good relationship really with Angela, and for very good reasons. And I was a child. I didn't have a good relationship with her either, but I had no choice because I was a child at her fucking mercy. And she had no one else. So I guess she kept my father in her life in that sense because they maintained this friendship. It's a very odd friendship if you ask me. What it really was, I worked it out really only the last 10, 15 years or so of therapy. I worked it out. My father was still madly, in some ways, still had a deep love for my mother. And I don't think they had a sexual thing anymore, that had ended with the separation. Although you wouldn't know, knowing my parents, just wouldn't know really. But I don't think they had anything sexual going on between them, but there was still this kind of a bond and kind of a deep love. Oh, were they savage to each other. The things they used to tell me about the other was just quite ugly, and I just sit back and think, if you hate each other that much, why are you here? Why are you still cycling each other like 2 crashing planets on some weird orbit, waiting to eviscerate the other, and for what? Why do I have to be party to all of this, watching these 2 adult children be so fucking weird, It's odd. But the thing about narcissists, they don't let go of relationships easily. They like to hold you in their orbit, kind of a control thing, They hate you, but they want you. They love you, but they hate you, but they don't let go easily. And I know this because I saw it play out during my childhood and, my adulthood too, watching them with their shenanigans. So Dad, my father, stayed around, visiting earlier and earlier to pick me up on the alternate weekends, And even Kay said, why is David here so early? He's not supposed to be here till 10. Mum said, oh, what does it matter? We have a cup of tea, we talk about things, and, what harm is it really? Because I'm awake from 4 and so is he. It's not like he's waking me up and getting me out of bed, Case. But Case was naturally jealous and suspicious, as he should have been, being the new man on the block, Anyway, so my father would arrive early. And actually, if truth be known, it annoyed me more than anyone, because I hate being dragged out of bed fucking early by idiots and being forced to dance to their tune and live their expectations when I should be on repose in the astral doing my spiritual work, as I have always done, even as a child. 1 foot tethered on earth and 1 foot tethered in the other realms, because I didn't know it then, but I was a shaman. I've never been completely bound to this earth. Hasn't been all that kind to me, this earth, anyway. So I need my dream states and my dreamscape and my spiritual work and travelling and my sleep, at least. I need that. It's survival for me more than anything else. By 7 I'd already had quite a few near deaths too, so I was already untethered. Anyway, so my father would come earlier and earlier and my mother would welcome it in a way. You know, what are you doing here so early, David? Why are you here? Do you ever sleep? 3 a.m. I must be alone with babies. I wonder if that man actually really hates me too on some level. Seeks my destruction. It's paranoia. I get paranoid because I have a history of that. Men seeking my destruction. Because there's no actual overt spoken with words communication, the mind goes on their little whirling dervishes. And it's a strange kind of friendship too, based on what actually? He admires my freedom and my defiance. And I admire his sweetness and his music. Anyway, he's got other sweethearts. I wonder if he's liking their Instagram at 3 o'clock in the morning too. Probably. Don't think for one moment I'm that special. You have to laugh. I've got another man that I don't even know who he is. Don't even know how he found me. He started liking all my posts on Instagram. But he actually writes sweet little comments, encouraging, motivating little comments to me, which is quite sweet. Quite genuine and authentic. So at least I know, what his real intentions and where his heart lies. Don't know it from Adam. But he's been quite heartfelt. So I acknowledge that too. So I don't know what's happening in my world, people of Earth. I've got all these people kind of orbiting me a bit like my father used to orbit my mother, but it's a different dynamic, of course, because they were married and lovers and friends and partners. But we've got this kind of little flowering of sweetness of men and women around me, inspiring me or motivating me or inspired and motivated by me at times. And it's like a blossoming of spirit and emanation. It's a sweetness. Yes, it's a sweetness. And one day, when I work out who genuinely values, cherishes, adores, loves me and is able, willing and capable of being a partner to me, then that might happen one day. But I don't know who that person is or who they might be, because I probably haven't met them yet. But this is all part of the healing, it's the enlivenment and the support and the community and the encouragement and the admiration and the ennoblement. And I've poured a lot of energy into, some of those souls too, 14 years, so I'm really appreciative that they're pouring a bit of energy back into me. It's wasn't expected. I didn't think that would ever happen, quite frankly. Came out of left field. I'll tell you when it came about. It came about when I told them all to not get rooster boosted and to preserve what's left of their body autonomy, and they realised I'm the real fucking McCoy. I'm not just raving on for my own selfish needs, but I genuinely worry about, my friends and acquaintances out in the world too, and that I was fighting for them on social media as much as I possibly could, given I was shadow banned and silenced, and my posts were withheld and denied my own measure of success because out of sheer fucking spite, because I dared to say no. So because of that, they've all decided that I'm some kind of hero or champion, when I'm really not. I'm no different to anyone else on this planet. I struggle probably more than everyone else because of my stoicism and my determination to say no. I was severely punished. It even cost me both of my daughters now. I was severely punished for my shamanic ways and my wildness and my independence and my defiance and my freedom. What freedom? You're not free unless everyone's free, am I right? What freedom? To go out and come home alone on my own time frames if I choose to. It's the only freedom I have. And am I hated even for that? I'm actually hated just because I keep breathing. Does that piss some people off? But you know what? I don't fucking care. If I exist only to piss someone off out there, then that's probably my power and my strength and my determination and my ability to transcend and overcome all my enemies, all of them. They were legion, people there. They were fucking legion. So yes, like a sweet, vulnerable little old mama tea, I'm grateful even for the 3 a.m. likes on my Instagram. And my father, who loved my mother so transcendently and spiritually and weirdly, didn't let go of her completely. They were still in collusion when I was living in the house in Logan Lee. He colluded with her con man, asshole, psychopathic last husband, and they were their own little legion. But I escaped there and I survived. I still don't know how I survived because at that time I was severely traumatised. And had lived under constant pernicious threat for 18 months and longer, 5 years really, because I was in that house in Logan Lee for 2.5 years as well. Anyway, I escaped, and then the gods brought me to this house in 2003, and 22 years later I'm still here and I'm still finding my feet. And sometimes I get slammed with the enormity of what it is I've actually survived, and that no one can comprehend the price I paid, what it's cost me, the immense loss and the immense spiritual warfare and battles I've fought just to be alive in this moment. There goes that little red car again. It's like being fucking tortured. Maybe it's a sign I should reach out to my daughter. I reached out to her in July and got a mouthful of abuse again, so no, fuck it. I don't need any more ugliness. I need to be loved, truly, deeply, honouringly loved. I need to be protected if necessary, although I pray it never comes to that. I need to be cared for. I need to be respected. And if you can't be with me for whatever reason in a healthy, honouring, nurturing, caring way, then I need to be left alone, because it's hard to be alone all the time, but it's preferable than being surrounded by legion, evil people who are false and callow and sadistic and cruel. Far preferable. And the other alternative is, if I can't sustain life alone anymore, is death. And that too is a preference. But I fought through life mostly alone for almost 60 years. And it's a testament to my courage, my power, my faith in the gods and the Holy One and all manifestations of holiness and benevolence and righteousness and will to good. I've achieved something that not many other people that went through my childhood have achieved. Most of them aren't here. We lost them to drugs, prostitution, violence, suicide. We lost many. So those of you who look at me with envy, merely show me the calibre of your souls, your own weakness and inadequacy and spite. I actually love it when people show me their true agendas and their true hearts, because it sets me free from ever hoping that they could have been any better or different. NPC, zombies and dead inside, atrophied souls with no real hope of redemption. If you're hating on someone else for no good reason, it says a lot about you. And meanwhile, the dance of life continues, and there will be joy manifested by Titania in her own body, mind and spirit, with the assistance of her gods and her angels. And there will be real, authentic, powerful, unwavering love. In whatever form the gods decree it gets manifested. It may never be a lover again, because Mama T's got trust issues. She's been let down, played for a fool a multitude of times. And ultimately, she who's played for a fool gets to be the fool, and the fool is a symbol of new beginnings and new growth and new potentiates and finding your way in the journey through the major arcana to mastery. And ultimately it all goes back to the 0 point field where you become the fool again. And you start that all over again, hopefully with a toolkit of wisdom, grace and peace and universal cosmic love that boosts you up a little bit so you can get on with what you need to get on with in whichever incarnation you find yourself cast back into. Mastery, queen of her own destiny, the Tanya. And I'm okay with that. It's been a long, long, hard dance and fight and metamorphosis as well. It's beautiful, frightening at times to the uninitiated, but beautiful. So this is a long video and I've gone on lots of all sorts of segues. I hope I'm making sense. Right, so the demon had turned itself into this tiny bat to hear God's thoughts, and he had expressed the fact that he wanted a woman's hair because it was beautiful, that she was a terror, but he always went creeping back, carrying whatever she wanted. Because there's a kind of a symbiosis that happens in toxic relationships where the dominant animal, Stockholm syndrome, the weaker one, finds themselves incapable of detaching or separating from the abuser, and it's a love addiction and it's toxic as fuck. And as I said, I saw that with my own father and mother play out, and how the dominant narcissist psychopath, which was case 2, could just detach. I'm off now. You have your little hissy fit. I'll be back when it's over, darling. And all she would seethe with rage, and it would go on for hours, and I would just kind of laugh. By then I was an adult woman watching all this play out, married with my own children. I thought to myself, detachment. There's great power in that. Switching people off when they're acting out and being cruel, not buying into their bullshit or their games or their torture devices, and setting yourself free. What does my shaman friend call it? You shall see tree. Holding on while letting go. Sometimes you have no choice but to let go. Sometimes permanently, completely walk away when people are just not willing to work with you or communicate or be real. And move on, babies. Moving on. Keep on trucking. Anyway, it says he always went creeping back, usually carrying whatever she wanted. Just excuse me for 1 minute. Take a little break. Be back. I'll be back, people. Shh, I'll be back. Right, where were we? Back again. Back in the room, people of Earth. I used to say that on Power Talk. I'm back in the room. There's virtual rooms with about 30 or 40 people in it. Oh, they used to laugh at me. Oh, the hatred and the demonic behaviours that went on in that chat program. For years I tolerated that evil bullshit. I don't really tolerate it. I had full-blown power wars. But it grew me back too. Grateful for that too. Nothing says courage under fire like a psychedelic dream of fighting a power war that was between all these different countries on earth. England, Americans, who else used to get involved in the power wars? Canadians, the Australians. Were we vicious to each other. It's meant to be fun, spiritual chat rooms. Meant to be, personal growth and development. Oh, the wars we had. Oh, the envy and the fighting and the bitching and backbiting. Oh, it was endless. In the end, I got sick of it and walked away from that too. It's too much. Who needs to live in that low-level fucking entity consciousness anyway? Such a waste of years and years and years. But anyway, did I learn anything? I learned a few things. There's good people out in the world, even in Power Talk. I stumble across them from time to time. It was always such a gift and such an amazement when you stumbled across the good people. Right. She always wanted something. Typical narcissist, just like my mother. She was so jealous of God's creation that she wanted to make another exactly like it, but inside the earth, under the Red Mountains. She sent the demon out to steal God's creatures and plants. She now had a great many down there, though they had a poor time of it in the dark, but she was never satisfied. She always wanted more, and at the moment her craze was to have the long, thick hair of woman. But now the demon had an idea. Instead of woman's hair, he would get God's hat. He had seen how wonderful man and woman looked in their hats, and the hat hid the hair, just as it would hide the baldness. Therefore a hat was better than hair. He could just hear himself saying to his wife, "Here you are, my beauty. Here is God's hat for you. I snatched it from God's own head for your sake." Then she would let out a shriek of delight that would probably shatter a big jug. "God's own hat," she would hiss, "on my wicked little head." Then she would laugh and give him a kiss that would tear half his moustaches out by the roots. Passionate. Don't think I've ever kissed a man so hard that I tore his moustache out. That would be a bit weird, but discomforting, and not exactly a loving act when you think about it. So the demon listened deeply to God's thoughts. And after about an hour, someone was just saying, "Oh, I wish you'd kissed me like that." No, never again. You had your chance, boy chick. Never, ever again. Anyway. He embedded me with worse than whiskers anyway, darlings. Hence, I'm still struggling 25 fucking years later, demon that he was. Anyway, let us carry on. Being happy, because happiness is the best revenge, folks. So the demon listened deeply to God's thoughts. And after about an hour, he could tell that God was no longer worrying about demons. He had begun to think about hats. This is why creativity is so valuable and important, people of Earth. Because while you're being creative, making plans, like I'm thinking in my head about that cuff I want to make and how I'm going to go about it. Will I achieve it? Do I have the skills? Can I make it? Is it going to work out? But all that planning and thinking about it and buying the materials I needed, which was, not too bad, but an expense. And all the other materials I still yet have to buy that I worry about. All those things distract me from worrying about demons and fake friends and fake lovers, which is a kind of a demonic force in that alone. Demonic. If you're not focused on the demonic and all the shit and rot and putrescence, and you're living your best life and you're dancing wildly and carefreely and triumphantly and defiantly, and you're just having your little Jack Daniels and your little bit of measure of contentment and peace and happiness, just a form of creativity, dancing is too. It's very spiritual also. And if you're making plans for making things and so you're mapping it all out in your head, you don't have time to wallow in negativity imposed upon you by others. You don't attract that energy anymore either, because energy goes where thoughts flow. You create your own nightmares, sometimes your own infestations, by living in constant fear and anxiety. It's an egregore, it's a self-creating force. So we have to break through that mirage and see it as the illusion it really is, and find out what is real, who values, cherishes and adores each of us, and who actually has our back and front and sides, and who is a true friend or a true partner to us, who has our back, who has our safety at heart, who wants us to achieve all our goals, who wants us to live our best lives with them in it, whatever role they wish to play in that. We've got to fight through the illusion and the mirage, carefully slough off the rubbish and the crap, find out who and what is real, and who really loves you, or me, as the case may be, whose heart is true, who will be with you, or in my case, who will choose to be with me for the rest of our lives together, in happiness and harmonic resonance and peace and childlike wonder and magic and delight, but also capable of being responsible adults with authenticity and agency too. Can't be trapped in childhood forever, babies. You can't be overburdened with nothing but struggles and problems and atrophies and stymieing and fucking evil either. You've got to balance out, being an authentic adult with agency, independence and courage, with that bit of childlike delight, which I'm seeing, I'm witnessing, that little bit of mischief, a little bit of sweetness. it lightens my heart to see that level of sweetness and attention, genuine care. Right. So the demon listened deeply to God's thoughts. And after about an hour, he could tell that God was no longer worrying about demons. He had begun to think about hats. He was thinking, how about a hat with a crest like a peacock? That would be pretty, wouldn't it? Ostentatious but pretty. A hat made, say, of leopard skin with a ridge of eagle tail feathers as a high crest. And maybe a long flap behind like a peacock's tail to keep the sun off the back of my neck. Then he thought, that was a funny idea of man's, the whole sky for a hat with shooting stars. He chuckled, but then, abruptly, he sat bolt upright in bed. A dazzling thought had just come to him, an inspiration. He leapt out of bed. What a hat, he cried, and he ran through into his workshop. Quick, quick, he gasped, before you forget it. Oh, what a hat. And he set to, there and then, making the hat of his dreams. He did not notice how a tiny bat swooped from the wall over his head and followed him, flitting low over the floor, and flew up to hang again, upside down, under his work table. Camel was tramping across the skyline. He had decided the safest place for him was as far from God's scrap heap as he could get. As he ambled along, the animals jeered at him. Hey, nose in the air, don't fall in a hole, yelled a coyote. Hey, galoshes, don't tread on your neck, laughed the gecko. Camel just ambled on, pretending to watch the horizon. He had a funny walk, each leg swung like a pendulum. Hey, whistled a canary, I need a bump on my back. Have you brought it? Here he comes, cheered the baboon, with my new tail. Here comes the travelling heap of spare parts. Have you brought my spare ribs? Asked the leopard, with a smile. After a few hours of this, Camel thought of burying his head in the sand. The news had travelled fast and far. Even the spiders in the thorn bushes knew what God thought of him. Maybe, he was thinking, this is what it means, being a mistake. There's no place for a mistake, and I'm a mistake. So he walked all night, and as dawn lit the sky, he found he had come in a wide circle. He recognised the hill and God's workshop. He was right back where he'd started. Tea's gone cold. Yuck. Then he saw an amazing thing. It seemed the sun was rising on God's hill. But at once he saw it was not the sun. It was something altogether peculiar. It was God in a hat. But what a hat! And as the real sun rose in the east, God's hat blazed out in the west. The birds didn't know which way to turn. The animals ran in circles, but then they all started running towards God. His hat was astounding. It was a great pale blue dome of turquoise. Isn't that interesting? I was mentioning earlier that I want to make that little turquoise stone, set it into a bezel setting, make a cuff. And moving up from the edge, from just above the middle of God's brow, was a huge glowing ruby, like the red rising sun. The birds cried out as if they could hardly bear it. The animals crowded to watch. As the real sun rose in the east and went behind a cloud, the dazzling ruby in God's hat rose higher. But instead of going behind a cloud, it became brighter than ever and golden. It had turned over, and now it was a huge, round diamond with gold behind it, so that it shone gold. Man lowered his eyes and simply stood there, trembling. Woman gazed and gazed, and her eyes filled with tears, as if to protect themselves from the dazzling fieriness of the hat. And when all his creatures were gazing at him, and even Camel was gazing from behind a distant thorn bush, God took off his hat. What he did then sent a cry of amazement through all his creatures. He turned the hat inside out. And now that he put it back on his head, they could see that it was made of lapis lazuli, which is the rich dark blue stone full of gold flecks like the night sky. One of my favourite stones, actually. And in this dark blue dome were studded all the constellations of stars as diamonds, emeralds and rubies. And a great moon rose there, made of tiny pearls. Then God took the hat off again, punched it inside out, put it back on, and there was the blazing golden sun again, climbing the turquoise dome. Which is best, he asked Woman, to wear the day by day and the night by night, or the day by night and the night by day? Which? But all she could say in a trembling voice was, "Oh God, what a hat, what a heavenly hat." At that moment a small black bat appeared from nowhere. The camel thought it was a big blue fly. It landed on the hat and at the same moment became enormous. A bat bigger than an elephant wrenched off God's hat and flew upwards with it. A roar of dismay went across the world. God flailed his arms. Man and woman stood up in terror. "It's Frogfoot," screamed Woman. But God was quick. He hurled a thunderbolt. The bat dodged in the air as the bolt went smoking past. Another followed and just scorched the claws of his left foot. He changed direction and flew at the sea. The next thunderbolt sizzled past his ear and went into a cloud. Immediately the cloud seemed to explode. It started to stab downward lightnings at him. Terrible green shocks ran along the tips of his moustache and stood crackling there. His eyes went orange, then red. With a yell, he dropped the hat. All the creatures saw the glorious hat tumble from the sky and the splash that went up as it hit the sea. None saw what had become of the demon bat. He had become a tiny kingfisher, the size of a sparrow, and he was already scooting along within inches of the sea, in the hollows of the waves, where not even God could see him. And so he got to land and vanished into a clump of bamboo. God sat on the dunes, weeping. He simply could not believe it. The demon! All the animals and the birds cried under the trees and in the trees. Woman rested her head on God's wrist to console him. Man sat at his feet, his head bowed. Camel watched it all. If only woman would console him as she consoled God. Then, heaving a deep breath, he groaned a long, soft groan. Woman made God some hot supper. Outside, the sun was sinking to the edge of the world as a fiery red ball. At this moment, sighed God, somewhere in the depths of the sea, the great diamond on my hat will have turned over, and the ruby will be glowing in its place, sinking towards the rim of the hat. And he sighed again. Then, a few minutes later, when the sun had gone down and the full moon was rising above the other side of the world, he said, "And now my pearly moon will be rising from the rim of the hat, but inside, all watched by the fishes, all in the bottom of the sea." And he sighed again. "What you need," said man, "is some creature to go down there and find it and bring it back up." God looked at man. Man had good ideas. "Maybe some big fish could do it," man went on. God shook his head. "I didn't give them enough brains. If I had, they would have wanted to live on land. They'd have been unhappy in the sea, and I didn't want that." "Camel!" shouted woman. She shouted in fright because the camel, still thinking about how woman had comforted God, had just put his head in at the window. God looked at woman. What if she was right? Camel wasn't much good for anything else, but with a few slight changes, he might be just the thing. God leapt out through the door, and before Camel could get his long, tangly legs swinging under him, God had grabbed him. "Not the scrap heap," the camel tried to groan. "Please, not the scrap heap." You're the very thing we need, said God. You know, I kind of resonate with that, having lived on the scrap heap for 30 fucking years. It's nice to be the very thing that people need. Loved for my experiential awareness and hard-won wisdoms on faith in my own gods and my self-determination and my courage and my resilience and my power conferred by the gods. Only through the gods am I powerful. Blessed be to the Holy One in all manifestations. Brings me to this season, refreshed and renewed and motivated and re-energized from the gravel rash of my own despair yesterday. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. The demon raged in the bamboo thicket. He bet his own bald head. Idiot, he snarled. Oh, idiot, you had it in your hands. There was nothing he could do. He was a fire demon. If he had tried plunging into the sea, he would have been extinguished. He was so furious with himself. He returned to his wife deep inside the Red Mountains and told her everything. He wouldn't have cared if she'd swallowed him. He felt he deserved it. But when she heard about the hat, her reply was strange. She took a nugget of iron ore in each fist, her face contorted, her bald scalp knotted into lumps, her dreadful eyes bulged, her mouth opened slowly as she stared at her husband. And in her clenching fists, the iron ore crumbled. Fumes rose between her fingers and molten iron splashed onto the floor. Get me that hat, she screamed. By the time the demon flew up into the world, God was leading Camel to the sea's edge. Find my hat, said God, and you will be first among animals. I will give you into woman's care, and she will comb you and feed you. That is God's promise. Now go and bring the hat into my hands. He slapped Camel's rump, and the great beast set off, swinging his legs towards the breakers of the sea. God had made him able to walk under the sea. He had done this by making his hump hollow and filling it with compressed oxygen. Another synchronicity is I need to swap over the oxygen bottle. It's funny how I get these little reminders even in these stories. They're odd, people there. Shows you I'm on my right path though, and everything comes into alignment. These little nudges from the multiverse. Something to think about. At the same time, he had made Camel's bones very heavy, so he could not float. He could not even swim with those bones, but he didn't need to. He now marched through the breakers and on down into the sea. As he marched across the seabed, it might have been dry land except for all the little fish that came to look at him. As they do, little fishes. God sat on the dunes, waiting. He watched a white seabird, a tern, circling and circling low over the sea. God smiled. That bird can't believe his eyes, he thought. An animal walking across the seabed. He simply can't believe it. God did not know that the tern was the demon, and the demon had a plan. He could see the camel clearly down through the green water, and the moment Camel found the hat glowing on the bed of the sea, the demon set off at top speed to Man's house. Man was out collecting food. The demon worked fast. Woman sat in the garden, plaiting her hair so it could be tucked up under her hat. The demon grabbed her, and when she opened her mouth to scream, he jammed a big sponge into it. Then he tied her plait round her face like a gag and, slinging her over his shoulder, ran into the forest. But as he ran, she kicked off one of her sandals. Deep in the forest, he tied her wrists and ankles together with a creeper and pushed her down inside a hollow tree. He laid his ear to the tree trunk. It hummed and like a hive of bees. I posted a video this morning of all the lovely bees buzzing my dragon fruit flower. Which never fucking fruits, but potentials and creativity, blossoming and pollinating were in view. What will Mama do when she's blossoming, babies? Can't be pollinated anymore. Don't have a womb. I'm old now. But I could be made love to by someone wonderful that doesn't mind that I'm old and don't have a womb and I'm a bit fucking crazy and, you know. I'm winding you up. Can you tell? Because I know it's not going to happen. It's a wind up. It's a wind up for me too. Sometimes life just becomes a hive of bees. Sparkling, blossoming potentiates. Laughing, he ran back to Man's house, collecting her sandal on the way. Davidson's in the background, that demon. Baruch hu haba'ah. It's Hebrew, it means blessed be he who comes, meaning C-O-M-E-S, as in arrives, you understand, but that demon's deliberately punning. You're punning, aren't you, demon? Yes, he is. But he and I share the same kind of weird Schwarzer sense of humour. It's something we have in common, apart from being both Aries and both snakes in Chinese astrology. We shared that electrifying kind of cosmic bond in common, and I don't know why he's still around. It's almost 9 years after his death. In May it will be 9 years. I have no idea. He wasn't actually all that nice to me. It's quite cruel actually. Now he wants to make amends by stirring me up while I'm making my YouTube videos. Get thee to Gehenna, demon. All right, Tanya, he says. All right. It's all going to be all right, Tanya, love. He's a superb liar. Sometimes we have to live in a little bit of denial just to get ourselves through another day, another week, another year, another decade, pretending that everything's going to be all right. Sometimes it is too, because magic happens. Believing in yourself and your own heart and your own mind and your own spirit and dragging your meat carcass of a body along. Mine's not happy at the moment. I've realised my daughter will die laughing if she watched this video. She's quite right. I've realised why I've been hammered. It was the lasagna. Oh, but it was delicious, and I had, quite a few meals out of it for 3 days. Now my body is like, I'm not happy with you, Tanya. All that cheese and tomato, all the things that are not good for me. Why do you do that? Self-immolate that way, Tanya. Yes. Why? Well, I had a craving. Now the craving's satisfied. I'm paying the ultimate price. It's quite delightful when you think about it. And on we go, and on we go. Beautiful people of planet Earth, my beloved ones. Right. Where were we? Ah, yes, the buzzing of the bees. Laughing, he ran back to Man's house, collecting her sandal on the way. He spilled water over a patch of the garden. And have some more dairy that won't agree with me, but it's got theobromine. Mama too needs to be in love with life and the multiverse, and hopefully people who love me back. So love hormones stimulated by chocolate. Who knew, people of Earth? Who knew? Let me have another sip of cold tea. Then he flew up as a raven, carrying her sandal. Far below, he saw Man returning home. He dropped the sandal onto the path in front of him, then flew off, top speed, to the seaside, where he came down as a tern. To sit bobbing on the waves, just beyond the breakers. When Man saw the sandal dropped by the bird, he feared the worst and started to run. The froggy footprints were all he needed to see. He came howling to God at the seaside. God listened, jumped up, and the two ran off together. A few minutes later, when Camel came marching up out of the sea with God's hat shining on his hump, he saw a figure waiting for him on the dunes where God had been. "Where's God?" Camel tried to say, but the figure spoke. "I am God's assistant. My name is Angel. Where have you been?" God got tired of waiting. "He's furious. I have to take you to him at once." Hurry! And he jumped on Camel's back and, sitting on top of the hat, directed him straight out into the desert towards the Red Mountains. Camel groaned and began to run. All the rest of that day, Camel went along at his best speed. After a few hours they stopped at an oasis in the rocky desert. Camel was thirsty. "Best be careful," warned the demon, who still had the shape of an angel. "The demon lives in these water holes. He'll snatch the hat again if he finds us. We are carrying the crown of heaven, remember?" And then, as Camel drank, the demon snatched the hat off his hump and pushed him in. Camel sank straight to the bottom. It only took him half a minute to come walking out, but by that time both angel and hat had gone. Camel, excuse me, Camel ran round and round the waterhole. He thought the demon had pulled him in, and the angel, he thought, has gone to God to tell him that I have lost a hat. Inside the Red Mountains, the demon's wife wears the hat, and the day of her kingdom is the day of the hat, when the diamond climbs over and down the dome of blue turquoise. I wonder if I could set somehow a diamond, which I don't have, poverty issues, people are there, drill a hole into the side of the turquoise and somehow set a diamond inside it. How would you do that? Is it even possible? I get these weird little ideas with my silversmithing, jewellery making, and they're quite creative, but I don't have the skills to achieve them. A professional jeweller would probably say it's not possible, but I think it might be. It might be, actually. I think I have seen things embedded with diamonds before. Something to think about, people are there. But I can't afford diamonds. I was able to buy the small piece of turquoise. Wasn't all that expensive, actually. But it was a nice piece. But diamonds, that's up-levelling somewhat. Let's be real here. It's a little bit out of my reach. Anyway, there are far more valuable things to be had on this earth than diamonds and jewels and material things. I'm rich in spirit, as a former lover once said, probably to mock and deride me, but I am indeed very rich in spirit. It was his undoing, actually, so he thought he could be sadistic and get away with it. Mama T will tolerate quite a lot for a very long time, but when she's done, she's done, and then all hell will break loose. Comes a point when it's enough. And then she turns the hat inside out, and the night of the hat is the night of her kingdom. All her stolen plants and creatures are happier. That's another synchronicity, because I mentioned in my video how I stole that little dragon fruit cutting almost 29 years ago. And it's never properly fruited, ever. Oh, the irony. But now, and I don't, as I said in my video, I call stealing, but it was just, I took tribute because I had been very abused by the unit manager there, very, very badly abused her. Then, fined on top of it and dragged to the psych ward, tried to deem me mad as well. What? For protecting my children from a pedophile with his filthy pedophile comments. I was in the right. So I took that little piece of dragon fruit and don't feel the least bit guilty about it either. I was owed big time. Big, big, big time. Anyway. But now that she has night and day of a sort, she wants more and more of God's plants and creatures. So the demon is busier than ever. And out in the desert, Camel wanders from oasis to oasis. He stares into the waterholes. Sometimes he seems to see the hat on the bottom with the moon and the stars. He can no longer walk down there under the water because his compressed oxygen is long ago used up. Another little niggle from the multiverse to get my oxygen bottle replaced because it got used up by misadventure. Instead, he tries to drink the waterhole dry. He fills the hump up with water. It's hopeless, of course. Then the hat seems to disappear and he wanders along to the next waterhole, groaning as he goes. And he stays out there in the rocky desert where he hopes, maybe, that he'll find the hat in some small waterhole before God finds him. The end. Right, how many stories have we left? 3. But I shall continue those tomorrow because this is a 2-hour and 16-minute video with lots of segues and interruptions. Because lasagna's a thing, people have heard. A thing. But somehow, in spite of, my digestive issues, I feel better today. I'm much, much emotionally better, climbing back up. And this is the life of a complex PTSD survivor / warrior goddess. We fall down, but we climb back up again. And miracles happen. And life is truly beautiful. And take delight in the ones that love you, love me, love us all back, seen and unseen, heard and unheard, communicated and uncommunicated. The energy remains. Mama T's well aware of that. That's why she's amused. Blessed be, gorgeous ones. Have a beautiful morning. It's still morning here in Brisbane, Australia. It's 10:08 a.m. on the 17th of March. So wherever you are, shine bright like a diamond. Hold your line and never ever let the bastards grind you, me, us down. Love is the law, love under will.